Welcome, consistent, predictable income community. My name is Dan Roshan. I help real estate agents like you have no broke months. Today, we're going to talk about getting from six figures to seven. So if you are a real estate agent intending to scale your business to a seven-figure a year, not one, not two, not three, but seven figures a year, you're listening to the right show. Matt Cavanaugh is the host of the Freedom Chasers podcast, and they interview real estate investors, agents, and other entrepreneurs pursuing a life of purpose and freedom. And Matt really just knows that he can help to create, more changes in other people and be able to help them through finding opportunities. And he's turning those into reality. Matt, welcome. How are you today, sir?
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. So Matt, so let's jump right into it if we can. So helping real estate agents scale from seven figures a year. What do I need to know about that?
Well, generally, let's say you're starting, it depends on if you're starting from zero or if you're starting from like say
Let's
six.
say I'm starting from a negative 50.
Negative 50. All right, cool. So generally what we would advise right out the gate, if you're starting from a negative $50,000 net worth, meaning you got credit
Oh,
card.
just 50. Come on, I'm not that bad off. Come on, man.
All right, there we go. $50,000. So the first thing is identifying what lead sources and lead generation processes you're going to do to bring business in, right? So you're going to work for sell by owners, you're going to work expireds, open houses. It's really getting 1 to 3 key lead pillars that have leads flowing into your business and then developing an ability to convert those leads. And that's going to take you into the 6 figures of revenue. And then from there, we can start developing out the systems, the people, the processes that take to 7 figures. But I would say if you're at 50,000, it's really about increasing lead flow and then subsequently conversion.
Got it. And so with any business, including real estate sales, it starts with lead generation. Well, it starts with belief.
Yeah.
It starts with a good foundation of a mindset first. Then, so that's the first action. Then the first thing that you do once you believe in yourself, and if you don't believe in yourself, borrow my belief, right? Like you can hack somebody else that's been there, done that, and say, if I do what that guy does, I'll have what he has. And so then it's taking that, what's that 1 to 3 lead generation pillars, and knocking on that 5 or 6 days a week, every single week. And you'll get to that place of 6 figures, and then it's building organization, scaling it, leading it, et cetera. Do I understand that all correctly, Matt?
Yeah. Let's carry on this conversation a little bit about the beliefs. I mean, obviously you're absolutely right that beliefs are the bedrock of what we do. So we could tell you to do 3 lead generation pillars, but if you don't believe you could do them, or you don't believe it's the right process, it's not going to work. I really like what you said about borrowed beliefs in particular. One of the things that I've realized in being a podcast host, interviewing over 400 people, is this idea that when we ask them, what was it that moved the hockey stick or the needle for you? A lot of times it was seeing somebody else do it, usually, particularly somebody else that for some weird reason they felt was inferior to them. Like maybe they're uglier, right? Maybe they don't think they're as smart. Like something about that person is like, I think I could do that. If that person could do it, I could do it. So usually it's just exposing yourself consistently to people who have done it until you find that one person where you're like, okay, if that guy could do it, then I could do it.
Man, I don't tell my story very often, and I want to share this right now because I've had no broke months in real estate sales since 2008. On average, 10 sales a month. So I've had a good business. In 2005, and this is a long time ago, and that's the reason why sometimes it seems like there's a little bit of a disconnect. But I was 32 years old at the tail end of of almost to a death of just abuse of alcohol and drugs and all kinds of stuff. And I was drinking 12 beers a day plus 2 bottles of wine a day, and that wasn't a bender. That was a normal day. Right. And so I share that with you right now because of that guy could figure this out. So can you. Yeah. Right. Because there's not too many people. I mean, if you were worse off than where I was at that point, you're probably dead. So if you're dead, you're not the best subscriber for this podcast. Just saying. So, right. But yeah, find somebody who's come from where you are or where you, or even, below where you are, and then say, well, what the heck did they do?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And model it. And so one of the things too that goes along with beliefs, I think, is this idea of alignment. So there are hundreds, if not thousands, of lead generation strategies in every business, let alone in the real estate industry. Not all of them will align with your personality, with your desired approaches. Some lead sources are going to be more heavy in, you being a hunter or you being active, and others might be you being consistent, and being behind the scenes. So I would say align your lead generation strategies with your personality. As you're listening to people, don't focus on the opportunity that lead generation pillar provides. Focus on how does the activities of doing that thing, how will that feel for me? Can I do that every single day? Can I do that consistently? And if you focus on that, I think you're much likelier to achieve the result you're looking for.
I was having a conversation earlier today with somebody who works with one of those 3-letter acronyms for the government. I'm right outside the DC area, so we come across a lot of people like that. And I have a conversation with her, and she's asking me about what I do for a living, and I share with her. I say, I sell real estate, and I coach agents to have no broke months. And and she's basically a 9-to-5 government employee. And her question to me is like, that terrified her. And she asked me, she says, well, do you like doing what you're doing? And it stopped me for a second. I'm like, I freaking love doing what I'm doing. Like, there's not a day that I don't love it. Now, are there days that are hard? Sometimes, but I don't necessarily, like, if something happens in real estate sales that, goes a little bit, sideways or whatever, I don't need to own the emotion.
Yeah.
I got fired a week and a half ago on a $1.1 million listing. And the first time in my career I actually did this, because when that's happened and the few times that's happened, I move on. I don't even look back. I never even look back at the listing, but something told me to go look at that listing that I believe was $100,000 overpriced. And I looked on that listing 2 days ago with the new agent, and they raised the price 20 grand. It's like, you know what? That's just somebody I don't want to be in business with.
Yeah.
And so now I can reframe what made, make a bad day to, it's yes, I'm still taking ultimate responsibility of the relationship. Yes, I'm still saying, what could I have done? Who could I have been to be able to influence them to price it correctly? Yet it's really surprised me. Seldom do you see the price go up on the next agent, right? And that surprised me. And I was like, I just sort of chuckled and moved on.
Yeah.
So,
oh, man.
All right. So Matt, so tell us. So first is the belief, and then it's the action, and then taking the action, doing what you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Now let's say we're doing that. Let's say I got my license 18 months ago. And I'm just sort of breaking through. I'm just sort of figuring it out. I'm just meaning, like, I figured it out a while ago, but now I'm at that place where I'm seeing 2, 3, 4 transactions a month, or maybe at least 2, 3 to 4 every 2 months, something like that.
Yeah.
And now, I'm breaking into that 6-figure territory. What's next?
Yeah. So at this point, I mean, if you're doing over 100,000 in GCI, and we're assuming that you're doing it yourself, like with probably either no team or maybe like a transaction coordinator, you probably are going to have some income, some disposable income. And so at this point, this is where you can reinvest in the business to scale. So you could take a look at your lead sources to figure out which of them will allow you to spend more to increase those flows. So this is where I'd say until you're hitting somewhere between maybe 300,000 and $1 million of revenue, you just want to continue to pour gas on the fire. That's obviously going to cause a chain reaction of hires later on. But I would say you're now having the ability to reinvest in your business to scale more lead generation efforts.
So you go, like, at that point, you're turning from prospecting to marketing.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Got
Or, if you like prospecting, you could hire another prospector, which is just essentially another form of marketing. But yeah, it's really about buying, to some degree, it's buying some of your time back, so to speak, but doing it in a way where you have way more business coming in. And then you'll carry down that path until you literally can't do anymore. Like, we have a coaching client right now that's doing about 350K a year in revenue, and he wants to go to $1 million. And so what we did is, the first thing we did was a time audit. And we looked at it and we said, okay, we're going to put every minute and hour in your calendar for the next couple of weeks, and we're going to come back and take a look at it. And so it became very obvious to him when I asked him the question, how can we triple your business? I was like, could I ramp up the volume? And he's like, no. So those types of things start to sort themselves out. So one, I would say is when you get to a place where you feel like you have no more time, do a time audit. And, the buying of the marketing is the buying of your time back. And then when you can't buy your time back anymore because there's too much business, then you have to install people and systems to continue to scale.
Okay. And so install people's in system. And one of the things, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me on this, is the mistake that I see a lot of agents do is making their first hire be like a buyer's agent rather than an assistant.
Yep.
Would you agree that the assistant and maybe even two assistants would be the right play, or what are your thoughts on that?
So I have kind of a mixed thoughts on this. So I would
Okay.
say that I generally agree with you. Here's where I might differ. If we define buyer's agent as a full agent, I would agree with you. But I do think a showing agent is a powerful form of assistant.
Yeah.
And so I would say if you count a showing agent as your assistant along with the administrative duties, then I think you're absolutely right. Because I think showing is such a time intensive part of the client process that if you can offload that very early on, but still maintain contact with the buyer and do their negotiations, then you have way more potential to scale if you're a buyer heavy business.
Okay. So maybe one of your first hires before, like, I don't know, I think it's sort of like simultaneous, like transaction coordinator and showing agent. It makes a lot of sense depending on, and it's going to be flexible depending on like your setup, that type of thing. But I can agree with that 100%. If you're using the showing agent in a way that you're letting them take on just the showing of the property, and what you're doing is you're converting the prospect to a buyer, to a client. You're consulting them, setting their expectations. You are sharing homes with them. I do that on video. I treat my buyers the same, like I'm a listing agent. Okay. But today, because the market, there's half as much in the business today as it was a year ago, like half as many transactions in many markets. And so I had to make a decision. Okay, I'm still working just as hard to find listings. And guess what? I'm finding half as many listings, yet I have a standard, and so it's like, well, how do I meet that standard? Well, maybe I change the tactic. And as little as only like 8 months ago, I changed the tactic to say, you know what? Let me take on buyers. Yeah. Now, how am I going to take those buyers on and then still treat it so that it's not going to suck up all my time? And it's literally, I work from my basement. Yep. I have the video conversation with the buyers, and then the showing agent meets them at the house, and I'm on the phone with them or on the video with them before the showing, after the showing. And, and most of the time I've got my gym shorts on.
Yes. I would say the only difference in real estate between a listing and a buyer is a showing agent.
Yeah. If you treat it yeah.
Yep. You can have the same life freedom as a buyer's agent that you would as a listing agent if you hire a showing assistant. And the interesting thing too is, like, for us, when we calculated the cost of photography, the cost of the listing marketing, it rivaled the cost of a showing agent. And so for us,
yeah,
it's like, you obviously have a lot of times less control of the co-broke type situation, although some of these lawsuits might be changing some of that. But the interesting thing was for us is that our margins were very, very similar once we recognize if we have a great showing agent, a listing can provide. Now, one of the challenges that may not be a challenge as much anymore, but when the market was so crazy hot for sellers, you couldn't get a buyer in a contract. So obviously that was brutal. But in a market where it's very feasible to get a lot of buyers in a contract, if you have a showing agent, it's like you have a listing business.
Got it. And so, and that's a good point. I mean, you made a lot of good points there, right? If the market's not accommodative, if there's 15 offers on a home, it's going to be hard to use that model, only because you're going to be paying for every single showing. But you make a great point there that I hadn't even actually considered. Like, I guess intuitively I knew it, but I never really considered, well, I don't have marketing costs when I'm working with the buyers. So for me to, instead of allocating that marketing cost and reallocate that into a showing agent, but I never looked at it like that before. So thank you for giving me that awareness. That's a good way for me to, I mean, it's always good for me to be able to justify my expenses and my cost, right? So,
exactly. Yes.
So, all right, cool. So, all right. So tell me a little bit more about, like, so you work with agents that are pretty typically in the 6-figure range, help them to get to 7 figures. What type of what type of major roadblocks do you see, along that journey? Like specific roadblocks?
A lot of times the people that get to six figures sometimes get there in a way where they willed themselves to that position, right? They got a sense of belief. They had some particular skill sets, and they physically carry the weight all the way up that hill to get to six figures. And
Mhm.
when you feel the weight of carrying yourself up a hill, it's a lot of times you become very reluctant to trust other people, to that
Mm.
you feel like they're going to bring you down. They're going to tear down what you have. Like, so there's all of these limiting beliefs, again, going back to beliefs of being able to bring other people along and create the systems. And so for us, a lot of times, and this is not the only type of personality, but it's most common, where they have a hard time letting go. They have a hard time hiring and training and bringing on. And so therefore they're stuck working like just a much higher paid person, like they're working their 60 to 120 hours a week for now six figures. So we would say a lot of it's unpacking. Like literally, I just got off a call where the person just hired a showing agent and we were walking them through the process. And so it's like, but what happens if they steal all my business? It's like, that's possible. Not likely if you do X, Y, and Z, right? But what's the alternative? Do you want to be working this hard when you're 50, 60, 70? So
Let's not get, hey, enough about the 50-year-olds.
right. So that's
You
really,
just crossed the line, young man.
right. Yes. Yes. So I would say that's one of the
I've been
biggest
waiting to call somebody a young man my entire life, I think.
things. Right.
Sorry,
Love
man.
it.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. All good. So yeah, I would say that's a big one. The other one is the person that's the complete opposite of that, which they're absolute squirrel chaser, where they're hiring everybody with no systems and processes. So we're trying to bring them to the center point, which is trusting people, installing training and systems so that you can go the distance. And I would say that's really the big difference between a six-figure person and a seven-figure person, is the ability to install repeatable processes and bring people along with you.
What happens when you install those processes, but let's say you're either not skilled at finding the right people, or for whatever reason you're not able to motivate the right people? In
Yeah.
other words, let's say you like, I'm willing, like say someone's willing to lose control, or not lose control, but leverage the control, and they're willing to set up the systems, but then it's still not working for whatever reason.
I think that when it comes to people, because the cost of people can be so high, like
Yeah.
not only paying them, but like what happens if they're not the right person or it's not the right setup. I would say coaching is a very valuable thing when it comes to that process. Because if a coach can help interview with you and help you narrow down and help you make a big mistake, that could be a 5 to 6, maybe more than six-figure positive in your benefit if you hire the right person. So I would say there's a lot of resources out there, from the DISC to the Enneagram. My favorite's the Enneagram. There's a lot of books that I could point you to, free resources, etc. But I would say, like, hiring such a big decision, if you don't feel natural at it, I think this is where you could bring in a coach to help you make that decision. And that could be really, really valuable.
Got it. Okay. So besides either chasing squirrels or giving up, not willing to give up control, what else are the common challenges that you see agents fall into?
Yeah, a lot of the challenges, while they'll appear different on the surface, really come down to a lack of belief, right? They come back to
Mhm.
past trauma in somebody's life where they were told that they wouldn't amount to something, or all these types of things that have happened in their past and in their mindset that still, like, are not maybe even conscious to the person, but they're still affecting them. So you probably heard the concept of people self-sabotaging. And you
Sure.
see this a lot. And self-sabotage can look a lot of different ways. One way is just, having a lack of belief, but a lot of the times it actually manifests in the chasing of squirrels, right? It manifests in all these different types of things. I've had constant battles with this in my own life, where I grew up in a very faith-based family. And as a result of this, it's like, the idea of having wealth is kind of taboo to some degree, right? In those communities. And so it's like, when having means is taboo, your subconscious is going to go to work to sabotage the efforts that you're doing. So I would say there's a lot of challenges that we deal with directly in doing a process of peeling back the onion, right? Where we ask why 7 times in a row in various forms to get people to go, oh, I get it now. This thing back here is actually a belief I didn't even realize I was still holding on to. that's actually affecting the way I choose between these things over here, which is what's sabotaging my success.
Yeah, I've been going through a big discovery today of I call him Danny.
Yeah.
And so I call Danny the child that sabotages Dan. And maybe for Matt, maybe it's Maddie, or
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually label my inner child. I labeled him Danny. And what I realize is that that inner child does create a way of belief for me, that sometimes serves me and sometimes gets in my way. One of the things that I've recognized is that, and I'm sharing this because hopefully it's useful to the audience, is that Danny speaks to me through anxiety. So when I have a physical anxiety, I recognize that that's my inner child speaking to me. And once I recognize that, now it's like a little bit of a cue. Now I can have a loving conversation, set it aside, and then freaking kick ass.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And awareness is like, that's the starting point. Like once you're aware that you're being sabotaged by yourself, and especially once you get to a place where you identify what it is, then it's usually becomes a fairly you could solve that problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go back real quick, Matt. I should have asked you this while we were there, but I want to go back to the prospecting to the marketing piece, right?
Oh.
So how do you see the most successful? So it goes from like 1,000 different ways on day one that you can make sales. Go and take a look to like, where is your superpower? That's what we say in the notebook in the CPI community. Where's your superpower? And then once we identify your superpower, we already identified why do you do what you do. That's the first step. The second step is what's your superpower. Now, what are all the different ways how? And I agree with you. There's 1,000 different choices there, but now we're going to match up which of those ways of how you could do this with your superpower.
Yeah.
So that now you're implementing this in a way, 1 to 3 ways that that's going to be most effective. So you never feel like you're working.
Yeah.
Now we're at 150, 200,000 of gross income, maybe a little bit less than that. And we're going to start saying, okay, now we're going to put some fuel on the fire. What are the different types of ways that you see agents do that? Like at that pivot point right there, what do you see them do that's most effective commonly?
Well, I mean, the effective, are you talking about specifically marketing, or are you talking about the whole thing?
I'm going to change my world from prospecting.
Yeah.
Because prospecting and marketing, I should have explained this before. So I just said, okay, we go to marketing. You said yes because you understood me, but I should have explained it. So prospecting costs you time.
Yep.
Marketing costs you money.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to change from the point of it's me to now I'm going to leverage something. I'm going to leverage something through spending money into it. Now that could be, I'm going to hire an inside sales agent. That could be, I'm going to put a billboard on the side of the highway. That could be, I'm going to run Google ads or even Zillow or whatever, though I don't recommend it, but that's just my personal feelings.
Right.
But I want to make sure I always say that when I mention that horrible Z word. Oh my goodness.
I get happy feelings when I think of Zillow. I've made a lot of money off of Zillow, and I haven't paid them for ads. So Zillow and I have a very good relationship. At least I have good feelings towards Zillow. We'll put it that way.
That's good. That's good. God bless you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you see agents putting their money into?
Well, I mean, they put their money into a lot of different things. And what's so interesting about it is you have some people that spend money on Zillow, and they will spend money on Zillow for their whole life because they have great ROI, because Zillow performs really well in that market, and they're a great fit alignment wise with Zillow. So I know there's a team in my market that's phenomenal. They do 400 or 500 transactions a year. They spend a lot of money on those types of sites, and they kill it. They have a phenomenal infrastructure. They have a phenomenal team, tracking systems, and they're able to rally their agents to do the right conversions and follow-ups. And so it really works for them. But for other teams that maybe are newer or have a hard time with those things, they may not have those things in place. They may not convert as well. Therefore, the spend ends up being too much. They end up not making money and even losing money in a lot of cases. So I would say, like, just like there's 1,000 different things, it's really about finding what things can you do really, really well. So there are marketing forms that are non-spend, right? Like open houses. So you could spend money in recruiting efforts to bring in a lot of agents and teach them the non-spending modalities, right? So that's a method that a lot of people will use. But a lot of times people go into, I mean, for a long time, it was Facebook was a big, but that's really like, it's a lot of follow-up, right? So it's kind of understanding the people that you're bringing on, what are they capable of handling? Are they capable of handling a lot of calls? Are they capable of handling, there's sometimes, we see teams bring on a lot of people that are good on video, and they build out robust YouTube channels that are doing, $50 to $200 million of production off of a YouTube channel. So it's really like, who are you? What agent do you want to serve? And collectively, what are your skill sets? Are you great on camera? Are you great on the phones? Are you great in person? And then building that collective strategy around those pieces.
What failure have you learned from the most?
Oh my gosh, like so many failures. I would say the longer I go in the business, the more that I think alignment matters. And I know a lot of people disagree with this, and they're like, okay, amateurs do what they want, professionals do what it takes. I do agree with that statement, but here's where I think it breaks down. When we talk about certain types of things, I just have a really hard time staying disciplined. But the second I went on certain lead sources, and in this case, podcasting, I could do it all day long, every day. And so it's like, in one case, am I an undisciplined person? And in another case, I'm disciplined? Or is it really that discipline is a function of alignment? So that's my take on it, is that the reasons I failed in life is because I have not found the clarity. I haven't searched hard enough for it. I just haven't found it. And so therefore, I'm doing all these things for the money of the thing, or I'm doing it all for these other reasons, instead of working to be in a place where I found what I'm looking for. And just so I give more context on alignment, I don't think alignment means, kind of alignment might be like marriage, right? It's like, it's not perfectly happy all the time, but it's one of those things where it's like, when you find a really great person, you can commit. And I'd say it's like that, like trying to marry the wrong person still just doesn't work, right? So I think that you could be out of alignment in business and you could be married to that, and it's just a grind, versus like, find the person and then commit and then work through the flaws.
So when you say alignment, talk to us more about so that's alignment with the systems you're using, alignment with the people you're in business with, alignment with the strategies that you're implementing, all of the above, correct? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah. So for example, I called expireds, and I know
Okay.
you have a much more slick system as far as texting than what I started with, right? I was getting my head bashed in. But there was something that resonated with me with the struggle and the challenge. When I started bringing on agents, they didn't resonate so much with that same challenge, right? So
nobody wants to call expired.
Right.
I mean, I will. You and I, let's do it, man. Let's do it. That's a good Saturday afternoon for me. Right.
Exactly. It's hard to scale that, because the type of people that are capable of scaling that generally aren't going to stay on your team for very long, right? So it's one of those things too, where like following that path is there's a certain, like, I don't know if you call it peace, but there's a certain like enjoyment, happiness, et cetera, that you get by doing that. And I don't think you need to take it all the way to like you would do it for free, because it's like, you're not trying to find that level, but it's like, can you do this every day? Like, can you ask yourself, can I do this every day? I also think we sabotage ourselves with strategy. So like, a lot of strategies, like, okay, you need to like scale and then hop out and scale. And I hear this all the time. Like, I need to do something until I can hand it off. I think that's a very dangerous philosophy to hold early on in the process. I think it's much more valuable to hold the belief that I'm going to become a master of this and take it to really high levels, and hold off longer to offload. I think people are offloading too fast in that regard. So, and more of a commitment to doing that thing for a longer period of time. So I would say both of those things can really help.
I've had ebbs and flows throughout my business of what you just described, right? Where I've handed off too soon. And where I'm at now, if my philosophy on that is I'm going, and I'm really like, my DNA says, get rid of it as quick as possible. Okay. Yep. But what I've learned is that because of that, sometimes I hand off too soon. And then there's like these fits and starts, right? Because then I got to come back, take it back. I got to rebuild it. And, and because real estate sales is such a long sales cycle, we're not talking like, today you make a mistake and tomorrow you fix it and next week we're fixed. We're talking, that's a 6-month journey. And so in between, when markets are ebbs and flows as well, right? So you have all these circumstances, interest rates, inventory, et cetera, that you can't outside your control. what I believe today, and this is from experience, is that I'm going to hold on to it until somebody takes it from me.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's my true belief now. And so, and what I mean by that is you gotta literally take it from me. And I'm willing to give it to you.
Yeah.
But you got to take it from me.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's a different mindset than I think when I started, where it was like, and I thought this was healthy, and I'm still sort of back and forth, right? And I thought at the beginning, it's like who. But if you hand it off to the wrong who, I mean, and that goes back to that question I asked you earlier about the hiring process. If you hand it off to the wrong who, you're hurt.
You're hurt. And I also think that generally a lot of agents do really struggle with creating systems and creating documentation from the time element, et cetera. And so that's something that on the podcast side of the business, we got so absolutely in love with it. And so we have now a full-time person on our staff that does nothing but systems documentation. Literally, we try and record as much of what we do as possible. And thankfully with AI now, it's auto-transcribed and all these really cool things, but they're able to take it and make detailed SOPs, detailed presentations about these things. And so one of my mentors told me, a system is good when you can hand it to your 11-year-old daughter who's never been in the industry, and she could perform the task with reasonable competency the first time from the SOP without your help. If and when you accomplish that, then you're in such good shape that you still want to hire the best who's you possibly can, but it's much more likely that even if you hire the wrong who, you're still going to have good results. And, but with little to no systems and documentation, or bad systems and documentation, it's going to take a remarkable human being to overcome that, as opposed to being able to make a pretty below average hire and still do okay.
As long as the system's, as long as it's simple, like what you said, as long as your 11-year-old can follow it. And that's the key, I think, in systems.
Yep.
It's got to be intuitive, and it's got to be simple and easy, not just simple.
Yep.
And intuitive. Like they call it McDonald's, right? You cannot put the burgers in the fish fillet slot.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that from 16-year-old Danny, who was becoming Dan around that time.
Yeah.
So,
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Matt, if I am a 6-figure real estate agent and I am looking to scale to 7 figures, how do I get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'll provide my cell phone because we like to work directly with those. And so if they want to shoot me a text, my number is 209-202-4678. We can help do a free consultation and see like where their business is at, if it makes sense.
We'll put that in the notes, but say it one more time slowly for those that are maybe listening to the audio cast.
Yeah, it's 209-202-4678. Just shoot me a text. Let me know your name and that you'd like to talk more about coaching, and we can schedule a session.
Matt, what's one bit of advice that you'd like to share with not just the 6-figure agents, but the real estate agents? What's one thing that if you had a billboard right now and only real estate agents drove past that billboard every single day, what would you put up on that billboard?
Yeah, I would say, the biggest thing that I think that I would put on there would be centered around alignment. So I would be like, do what you love, do what you're capable of doing. Because once you find that alignment, your revenue it'll just scale.
Comes from a Christian, man. I'm imagining Jesus there. It's like, just like be aligned. That's what I'm imagining. Right. So,
right. With the peace symbol and all that stuff. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, funny.
Matt, thank you for your time today. CPI community, thank you for listening today. And I'm going to wish for everyone here to have the best day of your life. Be grateful, make good choices. Go help somebody, and go find